Okay, welcome everyone. Glad you could come for this very special, because we haven't been gathering for a while. This is a very special gathering. First, let me thank my partner in crime here, Piper Durrell, for creating this event with me. And also, I'd like to thank Linda Durrell. She's been a tireless worker again for helping us coordinate this. And as a segue from art to poetry, and in celebration of Hahn Garden history, artist Martha Olsen has a special offering for us before we begin the readings. Martha.
My father and mother, Jerry and Arlene Anderson, were lifelong gardeners. My mom would plan, plant, and nurture, and my dad would weed eat too close and spread mulch in all the wrong places. When they moved to Blacksburg after retiring from WVU, they once again began transforming their new residence into a colorful garden landscape. And discovered a little-known gem known as the Hahn Garden. Jerry made great friends attending classes and became a master gardener. But Arlene did not need to attend classes, as she truly had a green thumb. Both of my parents volunteered with the Hahn Garden and became good friends with Bob Lyons, one of the early directors of the garden. So today, I read you a poem that my father wrote. It was one of his favorite pastimes to try to create something beautiful with words. It's called Procrastinator's Lament. Wallow in today's delights. Forget about a better tomorrow. For when it comes, if it does, it may bring unwanted sorrow. Come, she said, to see my roses. I've never seen such a morn. He replied, I'll see them tomorrow. And he did, alone.
So we will begin with one of the best-known writers in the New River Valley, Ann Goette.
Who is not planning on a microphone, but we'll see. This first poem was written over 40 years ago after a day spent at Mary North's place along the Little River. July. We are a procession of women, raucous for the river, braiding flowers through our hair, sipping sun-warmed wine, tripping over tangles of vines and cleaning children. The river gleams the woods, a moistened finger slicked over heat. The river's voice becomes a croner's sweet tune tunneled through the megaphone of trees. We undress for the androgynous river, for white sand cupped in blue slate. We lie along the water's crusty edge, lulled in ripe reflections over river. You know, if summer were a deity, I'm thinking the New River Valley would be her temple. This is a more recent poem written about my place, which is on the New River. Dominion of the Beast. The black bear accommodates our homestead, accepts cultivated berries, apples, pears, peaches, and plums. He is without malice, yet tips the hives of honeybees, frightens neighbors, and stays as invisible as God to us. A doe standing mid-path to nurse her speckled twins nudges them into the ferny shadows to let us pass, so we can stumble onto the hysteria of turkey mothers the mindless scatter of their stub-winged chirping babes. Infant rabbits dot the grass like dandelions about to blow. Late afternoon loosens colored songbirds to flowered meadows, bug catchers dazzling the glossy greens of June. Blue-breasted swallows dip and sip the river's shimmer. In the fading light, we watch a swoop of bats embroider fireflies through the swarthy air of twilight as the river frogs begin the tune-up for their all-night symphony. We bear witness here to endurance in a changing land. Squall. This will pass like a summer storm. We have seen a serene and cloudless day turn suddenly to rain, drenching sills and floors before the windows can be closed. The treetops contorted, frantic laundry tugging at the clothesline. Dusty roadbed turned to muddy stream, and the house's electricity tapping a Morse code of threat. Summer storms don't last. The rain quickly evaporates, flattened grasses and crushed clover flowers shudder upright. Sun seeps the meadow in steam. The dripping rain gutter ticks down like a weary clock. Soon I will hear the back porch door creak, and you'll be home, and everything will be the way it was before. You know, it is a glory to grow old with old friends in this beautiful valley. So my last poem, Mama Son, is dedicated to Mary. Mama Son. Wild azaleas tucked behind our ears and babies on our hips. We followed the path along the creek through the woods to our Isla Mujeres in the secluded river. The older children scattered ahead, foraging for summer berries, plundering the water's edge for threads of watercross, stalking rippled quivers of nervous tadpoles. On the island, we shed our clothes, smoothed the sun over our skin like precious balm, raised our faces to it, lay our supple bodies over the sun's pale bed of river sand. We nursed our babies in shadows of shade, finger-fed our children grapes and melon, let them decorate us with sugar sand, and floated with them balanced on our bare chests, slick like otters. Our children walk that same path now, hand-fastened to their children. On the island, they slather their little ones with opaque blocks, lash them into broad-brimmed hats and bulky vests. Our debts have come due. The golden trade of tipsy mermaid days. Melanomas, lifted from withered flesh, puckered kiss marks from an old flame. Skin snipped, plucked, scarred. On that island in the long ago, we shared our children as casually as we shared warm sips of wine, recipes, book talk, drowsy laughter. Shared separate, solitary turns to slip into the silvery current. Long, lush summertime, afternoons that will never come again. The rivers tug at our water babies. All that silky, naked carelessness. Back when the sun was good. Thank you.
Cell phones are good for something here. I'm Charlie Katz, and haven't been in Blacksburg all that long, about 8 years, but my wife is a gardener and artist, and I've learned to see a few things. So if you wander through the garden at different times of day, as the sun dips in and out of clouds, you'll see that the light changes and the art changes, and everything gives you a little bit different view. And the first poem I have is Winter Light. The oak trees across the road to the south, whose bare limbs once cross-hatched the hills 20 miles away, now reach into the sky, a clear story of crooked panes, marking the beginning of the infinite. Winter is the bright time, when light sneaks over the hills, its morphing dyes of gray, yellow, red, purple, orange, crawling down trunk and stem, illuminating cracks and crevices in bark and blade, stirring dormant sap and seed to a limbic ballet, as if dying and living were one. This slant of light is a kindness. In summer, when Lethe waters the land, Helios lingers, and Chloris drapes her green curtain over my winter vision, graying skin finds no mate in new-growth lilac and laurel. Then I must lift my eyes to other hills, where no leaves block the distance, where a slim shadow in deciduous green hoards the sun, and a reflective glare signals the evening train crossing westbound.
I've spent a lot of time both in trees and gardens. The first poem I'm going to read is from my first chapbook, Looking for a Landing, and it's about an herb garden. Oh, it's about an herb garden that, you know, the first one doesn't always go perfectly well. A spoked wheel made with rocks, mint reaches green arms from its hub, disturbs the balance, runners out of control threaten, basil, marjoram. The black earth is hidden, gray stone paths obscured. Horehound is in the sage, chives lift purple heads in comfrey. Long fingers of fennel stretch their liquid shadows over parsley and dill. I fight back, rip out the creeping roots, cut off the flowering heads, try to control this one thing. I obviously wrote that in a time in my life where things weren't under control. The next poem shows my intimate association with trees. I just want to mention this because I love it so much. This appeared in Artemis, a local journal, and I suggest that a lot of you are in Artemis, but it's a wonderful place to both read the poems of and to have your poems in. Dwelling place. You lean against a red oak, listen for the sound of sap, but like your own blood, you cannot hear it flowing. You press harder against the tree, wanting to feel its pulse. Your skin grows gnarled and knotted. The bark's sweet smell becomes your sweet smell. You draw in the sun's warmth, drink the rain. Dressed in leaves, you grow roots. This is about a woman you've probably all seen somewhere. Am I loud enough? Okay.
Say that again. This is about
a woman you've probably all seen somewhere at some time, probably right here. Wrinkled Weeder. You've probably seen her, a white-haired woman, bent over. She's out there, early mornings, late afternoons, just before dark. The old crone won't allow one piece of grass, chicory, plantain, clover, or dandelion to survive her tarnished spade or clawing fingers. Inside, unable to straighten herself, rubbing her back with her twisted, arthritic fingers, she smiles, seeming to enjoy her pain. At her window, her smile grows broader. She looks out over her weedless plot, out over her bright-eyed marigolds, dancing daylilies, and the warm brown eyes of her black-eyed Susans. I guess I'm going back to trees. Leaf language. Last evening, the old oak's red-orange leaves floated above me. I rose with them, transported toward the evening stars. I listened to their stories, listened to the messages Mother Moon gave us. This morning, the leaves gather on my deck, whispering. I lean over, hear the celestial dreams that prepared the leaves for their fall from the trees. Welcome the stories that will prepare me for my long rest. And I'd like to end with Organic Garden. It was in another local journal that I recommend, Floyd County Moonshine. Coming upon my own death, my aged self, white-headed as cauliflower, lying sideways besides rows of radishes and onions, having spent my last hours picking peppers, holding lettuce and cucumbers to my breast. Surely, I planned to pick a few tomatoes when I stopped to listen to the uneven chorus of birds singing, each her own shrill song. Thank you.
This poem I thought to read because of watching some of the Olympics, and it was a poem I wrote during the Olympics many years ago, and it was the Winter Olympics. After the ice storm, I'm Mary North. After the ice storm, no electricity for a week and boarding a plane, took a shower at a friend's, packed what was clean, felt like walking out of a cave into civilization's charade. How we must appear to the homeless, talking Olympics, talking business, carrying money, carrying a ticket, destination on the pavement, look purposeful, look like you couldn't stop to understand. Boy, and the homeless population has quadrupled since I wrote this poem. Not a good testament to where we are. Just a short poem to the pear tree in April. The pear in its bloom, casting petals across the lawn. It seems a reverent step amid the fragile dance, appropriate. Gray cat that showed up at a friend's house, and she being partially blind and other things going on, said, I can't have a cat. If she comes between my legs, I might fall. So I ended up with Katrina. Katrina was the name that Catherine, whose cat had showed up at her house, Catherine's,
her nickname that her kids gave her. And it was before Hurricane Katrina. When I heard that they named the Hurricane Katrina heading for New Orleans, I knew it was going to be a bad hurricane. Katrina was quite a cat. In her old age, she became much more docile and would sleep with me on the bed with the dog. Great. Katrina's not, but seems to lurk. I discovered a jar fallen from the windowsill, a play she used to make in the night, knocking small vases from the ledge in search of moving water. Until her last week, she'd leap on the counter to sit by the faucet, waiting to lap from the trickle of water, or she'd paw the water bowl, splashing until satisfied. After long naps in the greenhouse, she would with stealth low crawl under the chair, eyeing the stairs until climbing to curl on the guest room bed in the warmest room in the house. She stalked me and dog, and the field mice and the wild bird. Only in the past 2 months of dying did she trust me to comb her matted and unkept gray coat. She bordered on feral, asking only for head rubs, lashing out if I stopped too soon. But this year, she has slept next to Dog and me. Her last meal, a snowbird. It was incorrigible. This is for Anne, since she started river poems. I was just floating on the little river just the other day. And this is sort of from that kind of position on the river. Good eye, dead eye. Lying over inner tube, beached, 1-year-old placing rocks his brother brings up from the river over my eyes. I am immune. The heat inversion to hell, finally rising to go home, small sun on my back, Ezra at my hand, rising loosely and precisely as a silver blue slate skipping stone. Good eye, dead eye. Leaves buckle and unfold, float, autumn colored in pure summer river, soul spinner, stone soul skipper. I had passed the shallow, steep falls. The goose flesh vanished. Neck back, I closed my eyes, heard your step out of the inner tube to the further bank to pick rhododendron, heard birds for seeing trees, taste of wild honeysuckle on my tongue, spinning the same branch overhead, heard the dead space where birth is born, the 5 pups lumped in the brood box, juxtaposed to the black innuendo in the trees, which I once saw as birds taking flight, the heavy task that nothing holds. Supine, I could not rise for moments. The black in between the trees on the mountain is more dense than you and I, and perhaps it is because Ezra asks, where was I before I was born? I have fabricated this intensity of holding space before our eyes, propitious emptiness. And just to end, I'll read Gravity's Garden. We are abandoned here on this earth, left to fall irreparably in love with gravity's garden, trying our lives to persuade a different ending or some other sense of time while our souls swagger towards eternity, leaving ghosts or trails of us behind.
In this first poem, I'm going to try to call up my first landscape. The scene is the Midwood section neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. circa 1962, the stoop. Its pebbled brick bit into your thighs when you sat on the top step that in-between hour before supper. The chrome-plated Avenue R bus ground back and forth, its exhaust mixing with the salt breeze that came down Ocean Ave. It was a corner stoop, so they came from all directions, humankind parading before your elevated perch. Yeshiva boys in their long overcoats, Catholic girls in plaid skirts, double-breasted suits followed by Henry, the super, in overalls, walking his surly mutt. Whether striding or ambling, they would not acknowledge you, never looked up. And you came to accept your anonymity, saw the virtue of the impersonal. This is where you first learned how to detach. The fine art of taking it all in. The coarse and the smooth, the sleek and the dull, with perfect equanimity.
For the agronomy department, he was a soil scientist. So that makes me even more loving gardening, the earth, the soil. And it has really influenced my poetry throughout my life. So if I can get things organized here, I will read a few.
It's tricky,
Okay. Clear cut. The cloud lays its soft palm over the brow of the mountain. Howling machinery silences the wind. Slopes shudder with the drum of falling trees. The tortured hill festers with chainsaw oil, tobacco plugs spit out, flattened cans, food wrappers. Bewildered roots claw the air. The gutted spring has lost her way. Torn up berry thickets streak the mud with purple tears. Deer stumble to find their beds. Turkey flocks scatter from the dead hen twisted in a tree branch. In the lee of a hill, the fox den sits empty, its cachet of bones still stuck with bits of flesh and hair. The red-tailed hawk and her mate spiral round and round with strange cries and disappear. The cloud lays its soft palm over the brow of the mountain. Getting there. I broke my shoulder about a year ago in a bicycling accident. And after the emergency room, I went to my garden for healing. So this is a poem that resulted. To my garden, together the healing days of sun and shadow, to steep my wound in the tonic of the mother. Come, billowy seed heads, stroke away the black bruise that sleeves my arm like an ugly tattoo. Nasturtium, bring your orange fire to cauterize the pain. Sear the ache into the bloom of a scar. Tissue-thin petals of lily, weave the layers of my flesh as gauze, meeting in the perfect bouquet. Oh, green, green fern, affix your delicate pattern onto the bone. Coax your exact symmetry to knit, to stitch, to remember. Gaudy beautyberry, lay you down in the muddy rivers of my marrow. Your bohemian purple pearls ululating a clarion call. Wake up, seeding the cells. And the fall afternoon sun, dancing like a gypsy in the colored leaves. Inscribe on the body of the earth the hieroglyphic that mends us all together. This is for my daughter, who I have been many, many times to the beach and ocean with. She sits right over there. I took pictures of her last time rising from the ocean. The Salt Daughter. She rises from the deepest part of the ocean, the place where the blind things dwell, the place where she spent her time of blinding. On her lips, the bitter taste of salt, of sweat, of tears, of blood. The smell of salt infuses her skin. In her hair, the shine of salt glistens in the moon's path. She emerges streaming sea stars and sky stars. She rises to herself as a star. She rises to remember all of us as salt. She rises to remember all of us as stars.
Good luck.
All right. This is called Return. It was written after my bout with cancer, of which I'm healed now, so no worries. It's called Return. After the cutting and the poisons, I take my old dog, who is blind, onto the path winding beside the chokecherry and brambles, the milkweed that bobble their soft purple flower heads in a small breeze. We pass beside the creek where the black willow stretches out her limbs along the bank and tosses her hair into the water eddies. The marsh, where frogs slush into the water at our footsteps, and the red-winged blackbird poses on a high stalk to fan its brilliant stripe for us. We step out onto the field that flows away in waves of grasses to be held by a ring of blue mountains. The field where we have watched and smelled and heard and touched all the seasons dance and turn again. We climb the first small rise, and among the sentinels of the orange broom sage we lie down, and my old dog places his muzzle in my palm. The sky and the clouds of the day pass over us, and the shadows of the trees at the field's edge flow across us. Still we lie there. The evening swallows stitch the air above us, and the smell of dark gathers. Still we lie there. We lie in the field until something ineffable passes from the skin of the earth into my skin, and then we rise, and without stumbling, find our way home.
By Picasso, which is, why do two colors, put one next to the other, sing? Poets place their words, one after the other. Still, they become a song, each expression waltzing off the page into our dreams. Somehow, from somewhere, a word melts into a phrase. Then, this creation of image, rhythm, wordplay emerges into the world. Crevice, crack, cranny, each empty space on paper is filled, then revised, until the syllables dance off the page into our hearts. An incantation, 26 letters fly high, give birth to their own cosmos. Only imagination allows entrance to this place. And that was a tanka, which is a haiku plus a 7 and a 7 added on the end. Usually I have to count it on my fingers as I'm doing it. Okay, I'm going to do just one more, just because, again, we're all ready to stand. And this is a good exit poem. It's called Cantankerous. Spring did not come. She was tired of the routine demanded of her, the expectations that, poof, there would be warmth and color. Her tears would bring green grass, create the miracles of daffodils and dandelions and birds singing in the sky, No, her plan was to hide behind a dreary, dark, low cloud until all clamored and clapped and hoped and dreamed of her return. Then, and only then, would she pull the curtains back, eavesdrop on the sighs and prayers, let first her shadow tap, tap, tap across the stage, all faces turning toward the sound of her own version of a hoop and a holler and a do-si-do. Faster and faster would she twinkle and twirl till all were enchanted. Encore, encore, 2 standing ovations. Once done, roses in hand, Spring intended to sneak out the back door, head straight home, pour a gin and tonic, plant her peas, and read the reviews.